Hello, everyone. Call this special meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Keisha Johnner,
Here.
Jim Mueller. He's going to be online.
Just unmute.
I'm here.
Cool. Thanks, Jim. And Steve McCombs. Here.
Entertain a motion for today's agenda, special session.
I move we approve today's agenda special session.
I'll support.
McCombs,
Aye.
Mueller,
Aye.
Donner.
Aye. On to business. Here today, we are here to talk about the Marion County Comprehensive Plan. And I'm going to turn it over.
Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Z. I am a planner with the Mid-Iowa Planning Alliance, or MIPA. We are contracted by Marion County to help prepare the comp plan. I wanted to give a brief update and provide some background for this meeting. So as we have been developing the comprehensive plan in the background, we recently completed a community survey that received pretty good responses throughout the county. As we prepare to draft the comp plan, we are kind of at a point where we would like to come to the Marion County supervisors and staff in order to talk about some topics that will include in the comp plan. Some of these include land use and transportation topics. Some of these questions that we've prepared for discussion today have been kind of accumulating based on past developments in Marion County, but also some of these include kind of questions or how Marion County would like to see development in the future. So it's kind of a mix between past developments and kind of what Marion County would like to see in the future. So for those in the room today, I prepared kind of an agenda packet of the questions for discussion, as well as some reference information in the back of the topics. And so I think what we can do is maybe just go through some of these discussion questions kind of one by one and talk about them.
Sounds good. Could you step out and try to call Tyler?
I'm sending him a message.
Huh?
I'm sending him a message.
I just did, but I
Okay.
don't know if he maybe. Sorry about that. So questions for discussion, is that my understanding? So we have the transportation, and we are waiting just a bit. We're trying to get our county engineer here. I'm sure he's trying to do multiple things. He was at our meeting earlier, and so somebody has stepped out just to call him to see if he'll be here. But we can go ahead and start chatting about it. And so in regards to should the county take on privately developed roads, is that what we're kind of looking at there, Missy?
I mean, as we look at the future of what Marion County, I mean, how we want to grow. So one of the things that in the past, Steve's been around all this time. So in the last 20 years, the only subdivision that's been, the county roads have been taken on were phase 5 of Hunter's Ridge. And that's because phase 1 through 4 of Hunter's Ridge were also already county roads. It's been, the ordinance was rewritten back in 2010 to reflect that we don't take county roads. We have all these waivers included because that was the direction of the county engineer at that time. Moving forward, somewhat, I guess, to look at what's proposed development look like moving forward. Do we want it? Don't we want it? I mean, are we willing to potentially, if we had another Hunter's Ridge come forward, are we willing to take, county roads? That's kind of is going to lead some of the discussion that we're going to have as where do we want development? Do we want to look at how other counties do it? If you want development on a county gravel road, then you're willing to seal coat or hard surface that road to get there. There's lots of different options. Do we continue as we are today, which may or may not discourage those larger estate subdivisions, if the developer is used to working in counties where they've got hard surface roads and, but they're not coming to Marion County. Maybe that's not what we want Marion County to look like. That's, I guess, what we're trying to figure out is the
Yeah.
next 20 years, we look at what's happened in Dallas County, Polk County, Warren County. We kind of follow the trend and we're 5 to 7 years behind where they're at. So we need to just make a plan, and that's
Okay.
what we're here to figure out. What does that plan look like?
I think in regarding, when we talk about the roads, clearly in the position in which we are in, once you start talking about that and you're looking at whether you would take on roads, I know that there is roads that people would be, they've already petitioned to us, multiple, right? And then we have to be able to determine what is worthy of having something done and what is not. But ultimately, I think it's come down to where we have been at today is because of cost. Tyler has said, this is how much money we have. If we were to do something, it would be above and beyond. And that would be looking at something probably bonding, to be able to say, hey, this is a road that needs to be done. And then in turn, could we pay that? Would there be enough property taxes to come back and to be able to justify that road extension?
Well, then, yeah, you're hoping that it gets developed. I mean, there's always that question, I want to build this development, but then if it doesn't get developed, then you're stuck with the cost. My personal feeling is at this point in time, I'm not willing to take on any more private roads for the county, just based on the fact that I know what our future, well, I don't know what our future resources are going to be. We're struggling now to keep our infrastructure in place now. I mean, would it be beneficial? Maybe.
So what if you required the developer to, like with Hunter's Ridge, to pave the roads, which is a major cost, and if they were paved and up to county standards, that would be a major boon to the
But
county.
that's the access road though. And what about inside we're talking inside the development also, right?
Yes,
That brings a whole new problem to how to maintain with the equipment that we have now. I mean, we'd have to be looking at maybe different types of equipment to do inside those developments.
So I was gonna ask a question that kind of goes, if I may, sorry. But should the county take on privately developed roads? Are we talking about new? So
We're
like
talking about
do it
new,
and,
so if
or are
they're
we talking?
just New, so if they're newly developed subdivisions and the roads are done, just like Hunter's Ridge, they're done
Yeah,
to the.
to spec.
To the spec
Okay.
of Marion County, they're in, all the design is inspected by Tyler, and then once they're installed to standard, then we adopt the final plat, and then they become county roads.
To me, that's a completely different question than taking on one that's petitioned now that
Correct.
was established and is gravel and is being maintained. I mean, that's what I was curious what this question was about, existing or new?
No,
And
new,
to
I
me,
mean.
the new means if you build it to spec
Mhm.
and all that, that's a different question.
Exactly,
So
they're,
then you
And I'm
necessarily say
assuming
no.
whoever's gonna do that was gonna wanna have a TIF of some sort.
not necessarily, I mean, there's been in the past a discussion of a subdivision that was gonna be built to all the county specs and everything, and they just wanted the county to take care of the roads. They weren't asking for any money. That's just,
So in turn, they're willing to build it and then turn it over, and then that
Correct.
would be our responsibility.
correct.
Now, I would say I would heavily lean upon our county engineer because he was gonna know how much, and that puts Tyler in the hot seat a lot, but, so Tyler, to catch you up, we're talking about if there was another Hunter's Ridge and the developer went ahead and put in the road to the specs in which you would specify and be okay with, would we as a board be willing to take that on, knowing that it was already done, but then it would be our responsibility to upkeep and maintain?
Well, would you as a board, I guess,
The question is we'd be looking at your recommendation. Really, we would want to know because it's
Yeah, I mean-
manpower. We have to think about, what we're looking at.
I mean, what's Hunter's Ridge, 20 years old, 20 something?
So 2003 was like phase 4, and then obviously 2000, or phase 5 was what, 2021?
Yeah, I mean, we have ongoing maintenance in Hunter's Ridge now that
Okay.
we're doing, so
I
20,
mean,
30, 25, 30 years old, so. Now, I would also say it's the most complete as far as being built to current or desired specifications. Oh, man, I mean, we don't get any additional money, like, for a local road, it does not equate to the additional revenue that you gain in mileage. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. That's what I was trying to say, but
So,
it's not only the surface though, what some of these developments will require storm sewers, correct?
that's true. Hunter's Ridge, for example, has storm sewer. And that's not something we're completely equipped to maintain. We rely on City of Knoxville and Pella at times for different maintenance equipment
Yep.
for the specific to
But
that.
if we were to add 3 or 4 developments with them storm sewers, maybe, by the cities may not be willing to come and help us that often.
Right, they have their own needs.
So how do we
It's difficult
maintain
now.
that?
So, yeah, I mean,
I think
it
though,
does not equate to,
If I could chime in just for a different, somewhat of a little bit different perspective, and that is just to spur economic development. I think that is, you'd have to look at this as a case by case basis. Quite frankly, I'm not prepared to say a definitive yes, we would always do that, or a definitive no, we would never take on a privately developed road. I think it's going to be on a case by case basis. And Keisha, to your point, sometimes they may ask for money, or Missy's as well. Sometimes they may ask for money and sometimes they won't. And Steve's got a good point too of what's the ongoing maintenance. But I'm fearful if we just come out and make a overall no answer to this, no, we won't accept any privately developed roads, you're going to chill the economic development of these different developments throughout the county. And I just think that's not where we want to go long term into the future, because we need to grow, and we need to grow in the county just like we need to grow in the cities. So all additions to the tax base are going to pay dividends long term, as well as making sure that the employers stay here because they'll have a ready and willing workforce.
right. And Jim, thank you for speaking up. I do think that we have to be mindful. I agree. Because if other counties are doing it and then they're gonna bypass us, that isn't gonna help either. Clearly, we know that there's advantages and disadvantages. I do think that, depending upon the circumstance, and I'm assuming this is you're gonna kind of tell us where those could possibly come in the future. Do you have some sort of ideas of, I don't know if you have recognized areas that people have maybe reached out to you that considered, have started talking about maybe future development? I don't know.
In the packets, we've got a few areas that are defined. Some of those are defined for commercial, more in commercial industrial.
Okay.
So the one area that comes to mind as far as, and this is kind of a unique area, the 115 acres south of Knoxville Estates sold, and it sold to a presumed developer.
Okay.
So moving forward, I know that Knoxville Estates obviously was designed in the 60s, and it has its disadvantages as far as those design of those roads that were taken on in Knoxville Estates were not to today's standards.
That's what I was just gonna say. A seal coated road, to me, that's not something that we're going to, they'd have to build it to the specs in which we would want it to be built.
Why this one becomes unique is would it be advantageous to the road department to no longer have the small cul-de-sacs and the turnarounds, but through roads? I mean, that was an advantage when phase 5 of Hunter's Ridge was done, because they no longer had a cul-de-sac and turnarounds, they had a through road. So I guess that's something that, it's just kind of a heads up. We know that it's some type of developer that bought it. We've not had any contact, so we don't know. Again, we've got counties, we just came from a zoning conference where there are counties, if you want, and Warren County is the same, if you want development, you want to do a subdivision on what's a gravel road, you're required to do some type of hard surfacing of that road from the nearest or hard surface road. Now, I don't know if that's a pro or a con, or if that's something that, does that cause more issues for the road department to have segments of hard surface? Will that discourage some of the, I guess, proposed development that we get in the zoning office? Possibly. We've got one now that's a significant amount of, they're looking at some type of commercial use. It's very preliminary. Just had the phone call, but it's 3.5 miles of gravel. So if you tell them that they're going to hard surface 3.5 miles of gravel, it's going to discourage that. I don't know that that's always a bad thing. But so, there's options as far as they said to throw out all kinds of options right now. We have subdivisions on hard surface roads. I'm thinking of Dakota Drive, there's all kinds of subdivisions out there. Those are the 80s, 90s. The latest one was like 2011. Those roads were not built to standards. There's a waiver on as a part of the abstract, which is what we currently require. If the county's not taking the roads, we require zoning commission and you as supervisors to, at Tyler's recommendation, to issue a waiver to all the requirements that would be in place if it were a county road. So, and this doesn't necessarily just equate to, well, it probably would. Typically, as far as commercial and industrial, there's not interior roads that are going to be required. So
where's the question coming from? Should the county take on privately developed roads? Because we're not doing it now. We just we don't have anything to say that we won't accept them. It's just, it's never been presented. No subdivision in recent years has ever been built to the standards with the developer coming to us and saying, would you accept these roads upon completion? When's the last time that happened? Probably Hunter's Ridge. So we're not.
And what's the one that's out there? Menegas, Johnny Menegas.
that one wasn't built to standard. So yes, they came in and asked.
Yeah. We accepted a road, 5 or 6 years ago in Hunter's Ridge,
Yeah.
because it was already a county maintained subdivision. The road being proposed was built to the standards and we accepted it. To Missy's earlier point, because of continuity in the road system and not having a cul-de-sac was advantageous for us from the road department's perspective and the development itself. So that's the only one I can say that we've accepted. A subdivision in its entirety has not built to the standards and come to the county and said. So are we denying? Is there language to say that we would not accept them? Is that where the question comes from?
What I think she's wanting to know what our thoughts are. And I don't think we're opposed to it. Just depends on if somebody's coming to ask us, hey, we want to develop, like your example, we're 3 miles out and we want you to pave that. I don't fully see how we justify that unless, it was going to be a monstrosity of a development.
In those situations, and I guess with other counties, like when we were just in Johnson County, they required whoever was wanting to do the development to hard surface or pay a portion of that hard surface for that far. And to recap, Tyler, I guess where this is coming from is obviously the way our ordinance is written today was under the direction of the previous county engineer, who was absolutely under the line in the sand. Absolutely not. We had a very high-end subdivision proposed and he didn't care I mean, it didn't matter that the roads were gonna be built to standards. It was an absolute, no, I'm not taking it, I don't care. So that's where, do we need to update language in, because obviously comp plans and working through comp plans may lead to then ordinance changes and how the ordinance is written, because currently our subdivision ordinance specifies that it will remain a county road and basically will issue all these waivers. And, unless there's an exception, at which point you would take it. So to answer your question, it doesn't say we never would.
Right.
It goes back to say, and maybe leaving that language is fine, and maybe we continue to do it on a case by case.
basis.
And that's where I was going with this. If we don't have language saying we will not, then I think you have to address them on a case by case basis. We could have one in the Dunreath area. We don't plow snow anywhere near that. And it could be built to standards and the expectation was that we were gonna take it, but we don't. Whereas you could have another one right next to Hunter's Ridge and it might make more practical sense to take it for this reason or that.
Do you wanna
Does-
speak? Yeah, he's got it, sorry. We only have one mic, so.
No, that's okay. And Missy, you kind of highlighted the fact that I was just gonna speak to. The point, especially for this comment or this question, is that when we're thinking about this comprehensive plan, in the context of this plan, right? We're thinking 30, 40 plus years out. And so as we have a vision generally of what the county should be reaching towards, part of that involves land use and transportation decisions and figuring out if we're putting our ordinances together to match that vision from the plan, does that include taking on roads or not? Because that is going to have a fairly significant impact on how development occurs, especially in the future. So it's not necessarily about the question today, it's about 5, 10 years from now on when you're crafting your ordinances.
The current ordinance, my interpretation isn't discouraging rural development, and we just saw it at Sunset Acres, for example, with the consent and waiver. My understanding is they've already sold lots out there, and they barely turned dirt, so we're not discouraging rural development. Because once you start tacking on paving, that alone in and of itself is a discouragement, or, a hindrance for a developer at times. That development may not have happened, period. So it's that balance on a case by case basis of what the developer's intent are, what the benefits are for the county.
Yeah.
So are we missing opportunities? I guess
I
that,
can't say that there are any in the recent years that we're missing, so I guess what that's telling me, what that's telling Carrie, the zoning office, if we were to have the situation we had, 15 years ago, it would be a time where we would bring in you as the county engineer, the supervisors, to have the discussion of before development starts of, how that looks moving forward. So I guess what I'm hearing is that how the ordinance is written and how we, that we continue with that, the way it's.
I think
the way it
we're- I
currently
think-
is.
I think we as a board, are, we want to have economic development. I do think that, we know, I mean, Jim has said that, that's priority. We know that to be able to grow. So I think that we're open, we just have to be mindful of what somebody's gonna come back and ask us to do. And, if they were seeking. So I think having this discussion is important because we have to be able to tell you, all of us together, what our thoughts are. And so it's not a wrong question to ask. You're correct, and how we're looking at it as a board. Yes, Tyler?
I was just gonna say, by the numbers, it's probably never gonna make sense for the road department. If we're looking at it from only that perspective, it's not going to make sense. The county's gonna have to look at it economically, from an economic development perspective. Does it make sense for the county overall is your decision ultimately.
But if somebody is going to build, or if somebody's going to develop that road and build it out to the specs in which you have and want to, hand it over to us, okay. I mean, that's something that then we will decide, right? It's
Mhm.
that perspective of, we have others that have petitioned to us and that we're not willing to at this point
Correct.
because of the cost, because we can't endure more cost.
Yeah, we would bear that initial cash outlay, which would be different from a development,
Right.
I assume. And can I make one more point? No, I forgot it.
I was just gonna say, what we can do in the meantime, in areas where the current developer maybe doesn't want to put in the roads to the standards that the county might accept. But you don't want to end up in situations like West Apella, I think Dingaman Edition. Years ago, when my dad was county engineer, they put that in, and they put in a 50-foot easement and did not put the road in a way the county would ever want to take it. And he told them straight out, you know, we will never take these roads, no matter what you do, because you can't fit it the way you have placed it with what you've got. So what we can do now is require that there's enough space that in the future, if it makes sense, to pave the subdivision that's not paved now, and potentially, you know, have it handed over, there's at least the ability to do that. Because I think some of these people that are petitioning have come in, you know, 40 years after the subdivision was done, and it's just not possible, you know,
Right.
so.
And they don't always understand that, right? Because
Yeah.
they're the second or third owner, and they're just like, we don't want this anymore, we want it paved, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think we do have some of that.
And through the
I'm not saying we
years-
couldn't.
Yep, through the years subdivision ordinances have changed. So in the nineties are totally different. You know, there were ones done, I think English Creek, isn't it like 40-foot, 50-foot road width? I mean, you know, they've changed through the years. And so you're right, when some of these subdivisions come to you guys, the board, and petition, you know, their roads weren't built to the standards that they're required to be built to today. So that's where obviously it's a automatic no. So, you know, we're talking about new development, which then leads to the rest of the discussion as far as, you know, development in A1. Right now, we're 3-acre lot minimum, 3 acres net minimum, 4 per 40. Then we look at, clearly, we're not worried about ag preservation, so we go to minimum of ag residential, could be R1, R2. You know, there are counties that have, again, this, you know, have a matrix built, and they, you know, when they're doing development, they're looking at what's the utility proximity, is this 6 miles on a gravel road and we want to do a 50-lot subdivision? Do they look at CSRs? Do they do a scoring matrix as far as, you know, not necessarily to say that any one of those is going to deter it, but it's obviously we're going to look at all those things to see if it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that was my other point that I forgot, was that what, by comparison, are we, where do we lie, I guess, do we know? As far as promoting versus discouraging rural development? Compared to neighbors or counties of like size, are we,
I would say
are we,
we're
which way do we
probably,
lean?
well, I mean, and that's just, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, we're probably easier to, then, you know, obviously we've had the, you know, Warren County, Jasper County, they've now gone to 10 acres in A1. A lot of them there's no development unless it's on a paved road. You know, which the other side of only subdivisions go on a paved road is, the other side of that is we need to look at areas that we reserve that paved road frontage, especially 4-lane highway, for the commercial and industrial, especially just outlying our cities, because that's the only place they can go. Per ordinance, that's where they have to go.
Okay.
The only commercial that we're supposed to, and doesn't reference paved road, is commercial ag. So.
I guess I would just say, based on my experience coming from Warren County, being there 7 years and now being here a year and a half. And I know that we can make some comparisons county to county, but you have to look at what your county end goal is, and like we're laying out this comp plan. But I will tell you, when I left Warren County, that at that time, they did not take on developments. They wouldn't take roads on for proposed developments off gravel. And like Missy said, and they had to pave to the nearest paved road. Skin in the game for the developer because you are beating up those roads, so they could ask for a paving waiver. I only know of one that was granted, and that was because there was old subdivisions surrounding this area, and they couldn't justify not allowing this subdivision to go in. Otherwise, they're off paved roads. You have Marvin Van Dam, you have Steve Brewer, you have Jesse Rockness that built out a subdivision out at Somerset Winery.
Did the county take those roads once they were?
No, they don't, but they have to be built to whatever the engineer specs are. And so our county, or Warren County's engineers, they went out to look at the roads because of some of the things you have brought up. Later on, the people don't want to have those roads anymore. There was one we dealt with that we found out the whole road didn't even get put in correctly. And so that was a long time before, and so then that had to be replatted and broken up into 3 plats to fix that problem.
So overall, advantages are its growth. I mean, to me, if we look at that, if the economic development side, I think we're just gonna have to take it per basis. I mean, I don't know that, like Sunset Acres, is that what it's called? We didn't discourage that, and that's a gravel plot, for how, so.
And I don't know how we would ever, I guess, looking at how we would ever necessarily require them on a gravel road to pave an entire subdivision if we're not willing to take it. To me, I think we're definitely going to then discourage growth if we go to that level.
I think to Tyler's point earlier about, parts of the county that you maybe don't want to encourage because you don't have, equipment that goes to that area. I think that's something that could be part of a matrix, to consider whether or not you would be supportive of something in a particular area in the county. And I think the same is true, something that is 3 or 4 miles down a gravel road. If you're putting 100 houses back there, what's the impact on how often Tyler has to send his crews out there to maintain that road, fix potholes, things of that nature. So those are all considerations that could be part of a matrix.
Right. I mean, I would love to see a development in the Melcher area or a Bussy area, you know what I mean?
The
And-
likelihood's not, we're kind of
But I mean, I'm just saying,
yeah.
and if there was a Sunset Acres type situation where they wanted to build that and they wanted a housing development, I wouldn't want to discourage that.
And obviously they've got paved roads that you could build you look at English Creek, it's got highway frontage. It's got its other, I guess.
But you got right, yeah.
But you've got areas where, they could, and I guess what I'm saying is you could do a housing development off of a paved road down in that area. And it's probably not going to be likely that you're gonna have a commercial and industrial try and locate next to it like we had on Highway 163, where we had industrial, we had a housing development, then we had somebody want to do commercial, and the housing development was all,
Right.
like not in favor of. But that's what we get into when we try and locate all, I guess, subdivisions, housing off of a paved road as well, is we need to be mindful of the location of that. And is it going to mesh with the next commercial industrial LDJ if they came in? If that subdivision had been there prior to LDJ and the 53 acres that they zoned industrial, it would have been chaos, but LDJ was there first. So
can I go on to lots and subdivisions? We kind of are in a little bit on this, but when we talk about the 3 acre net minimum, I am supportive of the 3 acres, and this is why. I am one of those people that have bought a place And prior to zoning, it was an acre and a half, I think, and there was multiple. there was
Acre and a
like
half
10.
gross.
Yes, and I think we need to be mindful of that. And especially there was, I don't know how many were in this area, in this 40-acre parcel, but there was a lot.
Your area was a poster child of why the ordinance changed.
Correct, yes. So, but I do not want to be like some counties that are doing 10 acres. I don't think that that's reasonable either. So I am in support of Jim. I don't know what your thoughts are on the 3-acre. It's 3-acre net minimum and 4 buildable parcels per 40 acres.
And what is it today?
That's what it is today.
Okay.
It was an acre and a half gross prior, so from 1971 to 1985, it was 3 acres. And then in 1985, mind you, they still had allowed gray water and all those things, you know, DNR level, they went down to an acre and a half. Well, some of those acre and a half gross, so you had 2 road frontages out of it, you had less than an acre to build on. Those are the ones that we see coming through our office that need a variance, or the subdivisions that are small lots. We rarely ever see a 3-acre lot need a variance for something. So yes, I feel like 3 acres works in the,
That kind of leads you to that question here, what are the minimum lot sizes for septic systems? I mean, so you gotta take that all into consideration.
Yeah, so that's a question, Steve. So really current code, how it stands, there is no set acreage size, but practical minimum would be an acre. And I'll agree with what Keisha said. When you have 3 acres, or even what Missy said, with 3 acres, it is a good idea. Usually, like what she said, with 3 acres, I don't need to see any variances. I don't have to usually go towards a smaller system such as a package system or ATU to be able to input that into the yard. But smaller you go, more restrictive I get.
Yeah.
My normal goal is to put something in without variances if possible. But again, going smaller and smaller, we're gonna be looking at systems that require additional work. County already has.
The 3-acre minimum basically just eliminates all that
Yes,
problem.
'cause we
It
already,
should be new buildable lot,
Correct.
because
Right,
we have to
new build.
we have to
grant.
grandfather in anything that, I mean, we have to deal with them. We have to deal with variances. But to speak to your, what some of the surrounding counties are doing, the 10 acres in A1, here's what you do. Number one, we have we have 3 or 4 that they laid them out that way. You eat up a lot of farm ground, which at a conference we were just at, 2,000 acres of farm ground a day leave production. So we're eating up our farm ground. And for what reason? Typically, those are the ones that are unkept, unmowed, on our list of things that we have to go out as far as code enforcement. They're junk havens, or they're trying to figure out how to split them because they can't afford, let's face it, 10 acres today, nobody can, it's pretty, the cost of what 10 acres costs today, nobody can afford to do that. And there's not, in my opinion, a need to ever go to, 3 acres meets the needs. Now, the other thing that was added in here that we're in the process of writing is obviously when the governor signed the House file that now we have to allow accessory dwelling units as of July 1. So every principal unit out there in any residential or ag district, we have to allow an accessory dwelling unit. So principal building plus this accessory dwelling unit that could house grandma, grandpa, renter, whatever, they'll all be on one service. But, we're still in hopes that, and it looks like, and I guess Cameron, you can, that 3 acres would be adequate to support that. Now, these small lot subdivisions that we're gonna have to allow them in, we're gonna lead to more variances and possibly saying, you can't squeeze it in. There's, I don't know how that's gonna go. I guess time will tell how that's gonna be, but.
and I'd second that on there. Smaller you get, like I already said, restrictive. And I was gonna say, we already have 850 plus maintenance contracts for this county. And that's already, yes, you're reducing that cost of, hey, having the 10 acres, but you're gonna be putting it somewhere else. So yeah, your septic system, you're paid for it, but now you have to pay someone every year to make sure to come out, inspect it, and make sure it's doing all that. So there is, like we said, negatives and positives for it all. But if we keep it there at the standard 3 acres, I see usually we'll have no issues, but more smaller, more variances that are needed and just gonna
I
cost.
agree with Keisha. I think 3 acres is the right number. Any bigger than that, and you're wasting a lot of farmland for development, that only becomes a problem later on for maintenance and those things. And any smaller than that, I think is going to be problematic because you want a rural subdivision out there. You don't, if you want to live right next to somebody, then you're going to move into town anyway. So you're going to want a little room out there. I think 3 acres sounds like a good compromise. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Seems like it's working just fine at 3 acres right now.
I agree. All right,
Our current subdivisions R1, R2 are minimum lot size of 1 acre, but those are also subject to potential cluster systems, community systems. It's in the ordinance that, and we have very few of those go in. I'm gonna say for that reason, people don't want, when you're an acre, especially now when we're having to allow more, it gets extremely tight of whether or not you're gonna squeeze everything into R1 or to 1 acre. So therefore, that's where,
what was Sunset? What was Sunset?
they're 3 acre, well, 3 to 7.5.
Okay, all right,
So a
okay.
minimum, they did ag residential, which is a minimum of 3, and they have 7.5 acre lots. So
That's what I thought.
they have adequate space to, the last R1, R2 subdivision that went in, I think is Wildwood 3 out on Dakota Drive. So, and that was like 2011.
Let's keep moving. So land use, should the county direct developments closer to cities? Is there a matrix? Should this be part of the scoring? Well, when you're talking about developments, are you just talking, are you talking commercial or are you talking, what are we looking at here, I guess? What do most places do? What most counties do?
You know, the intent here was with some of these questions that, they all kind of weave together, and we actually had them in a different order to start with, but we decided that transportation was maybe the most important because that would kind of lead us towards some of these others. The question on land use, services exist closest to the cities, whether that be roads, the potential for utilities, whether it be, city water, city sewer for some of these, residential type developments. And so, the question, I guess, is, should there be a policy or a promotion of development closer to the cities, whether it be commercial, or whether it be residential?
What's the chances though of that then being annexed?
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, that's part of it, right?
Yeah,
As
that's
it
absolutely
grows.
part of the discussion.
So when Ankeny, I'm just gonna use Ankeny, as it's grown, do they just continue to annex? How does that work?
They're aggressively annexing prior to any development happening to ensure that that development happens in their community.
I mean, some of the areas that we define or defined in this packet, that they are, some of them were, closest to Knoxville. And those are, I think that, I'm not gonna speak for Knoxville, but in all likelihood, where they lay, before there were to be the next Weiler or whatever, they're gonna annex that.
So
So they're gonna
what
need
about,
city services.
we do have like on 163, you got LDJ,
Yep.
which is a kind of a unique situation,
is.
but I mean, it's a little bit further outside of, city of Pella. What's the chances of having something along there? I guess
I mean, there's 53 acres of industrial there. I can't speak to, now that it's gone to an ESOP, and obviously Lauren still owns that, but things change all the time because we don't live forever and life-changing events happen. And so
but even just on 163, I mean, those are some things that could happen.
depends
right?
on, I mean, again, each
If-
one, it's can they support their business on a septic? Is it something that's adequate to be on a septic? So we have a very large vet clinic going in and out by the sale barn, and it's on hard surface. Obviously, they're working with Cameron as far as septic, and so to say it can't happen, it can. I mean, we had Otley, we've got, development in Otley, that building's about done.
But you talk about Knoxville Estates and then that ground that's going to be there, if that was another development that was spec'd with concrete, to the specs in which the county engineer, had stated. I don't know this question, so I'm gonna ask it. When you annex, can you start annexing? I mean, because I know
Can't
we've
form
had
an
it.
island.
Right, you can't form an island, but we have a city that's kind of carved out where they wanted to annex because there was a junk, dealing with that junkyard, so I just don't know what situations we're looking at, but ultimately I want growth. So I will tell you, I mean, I'm looking at wanting to grow the county versus, these onesies, twosies. I mean, when you've got 10 years going by and you only grew 100, I'm hoping the census will show that we've increased.
I mean,
Clearly,
and that's-
hopefully, with,
The unique thing is there's houses going up all the time, but my understanding is why we don't show growth is just like you and I. The households are getting smaller. So we're building houses. And we've had a lot of houses go in the last 5 years, but the households are getting smaller. So therefore the numbers don't go up because now it's 2 people in the house instead of 4 or 5. So
I think that property south of Knoxville Estates is probably a pretty good example of something that would probably stay in the county for a while.
but okay.
And the only reason I say that is because, I'm gonna guess that the city of Knoxville doesn't want Knoxville Estates. And there's nothing on the other side
So
of
that could
I would
somewhat
see.
create an island. Okay. And not that I don't want the growth, but we do have to be mindful as a county that we're third in line, really. I mean, when it comes to property tax, you got your schools, your cities, and then us. We do all this and then it's just automatically, annexed. I guess.
So Keisha, also just one thing to keep in mind too, as far as the cities annexing already developed property, residential properties like that, is whatever the standards are for the city, they need to be prepared to fulfill those same requirements, those same standards at any annexed residential location. That includes police, fire, sewer, water. So if you've got curb and gutter with a storm sewer, you would be expected from a city perspective to provide that within a limited time frame for any of those annexed areas. Street lights is another example of all those things. So a city is less likely to, or I won't say less likely, but they have to go into it very mindfully because it's not a panacea for the cities to go in there and say, oh, you know what? We've got a development there and boom, we're going to annex it and absorb all of that tax revenue because there's a significant investment on their behalf as well. And if they, I think at some point they would also be required to sign up for or provide sewer services, regular sewer services to those homes as well. So I don't see a huge risk of that unless those developments are built to city standards to begin with, which would be rather unlikely because I suspect that that's pretty expensive.
So Jim, what's your perspective? Would you like it to grow closer? I mean, clearly coming from somebody that served multiple roles now, right? With the
Right.
board, a city. Would you like that growth? When it comes to, where we would like to see the development, do we want that near cities? I mean, obviously, when you got sewer and stuff like that, if you can hook into it, that's beneficial, but
I wouldn't discourage any development nearby the cities. I would let the developers determine where they're gonna develop. If they want to develop something near the city or near a city, I wouldn't discourage that, not in the least.
right.
But I also wouldn't go out there and say, okay, well, you know what, we've got a hot spot right here beside Knoxville, and we want you to build, instead of building in the city or some other location, we want you to build in the county right outside of the city. I don't think that's the approach that we want to take either.
I'm going to use an example of Pleasantville when they put the bypass through. Land investors come along and bought that ground thinking that there was going to be quite the developments, and it never really happened. I would like to see developments there, but I don't know where the city and the county meet in Pleasantville. And so,
And a lot of it along the 4-lane is city. They have
Okay.
already annexed that. Now, obviously, we've had a change of administration in Pleasantville, and I do know that they were very proactive when we talked development, that maybe they had land that could be developed within their city, and then across the road was county. They would always prefer through that process that be within the ground within their city be developed first. I mean, obviously, we have a unique situation, which always the question comes about of we're only going to get within 1 mile of Pella because there's a bubble around Pella. And I mean, that's the way development takes place. If that 1 mile, the development's gonna be done under the direction of the city of Pella. So when I'm asked, does that sometimes discourage development to create a bubble? Well, Sunset Acres would be, I guess, one of those. They're 1,000 feet outside that 1 mile. I mean, that
Missy, just a real quick question on that 1 mile bubble around Pella. That 2080 agreement is due to expire soon, isn't it?
Correct, the end of this year.
At the end of this, so at the end of the calendar year or at the end of on
Sorry.
June 30,
December 31st.
December 31? Okay, so I mean,
must
in
be
theory,
reviewed every 5 years or upon, it could be done upon either city or county request or the update of the city of Pella's comp plan, I believe.
so it can renew without our approval, or we would
No.
have to approve it as well?
You guys would have, I mean, it has to go through the Pella and then it has to go through the supervisor,
Okay.
so.
All
It
right,
has to-
so I guess my point is, I mean, in theory, I mean, we could take the city's interests out of that 1 mile jurisdiction.
Yes. I believe that's
And
accurate.
I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we do that. I'm just suggesting that we have options.
I don't have the 2080 in front of me to know. I thought either or could make a request. Now, I don't know how that looks. If either or can make a request to, do away with it. And I'm not sure how that looks moving forward. It's been in place since 2002, 2003. So either can make a request or either can make a request for an update.
Andrew, can you tell us as a board, is that common among cities? That they have those 2080 agreements in place for like a 1 mile or 2 mile?
Yeah, for communities of a certain size,
Okay.
for sure. And there's advantages to both sides to that. One is the cities get a say in how development occurs before the annexation occurs. And from the county side, it also helps the county by indicating if there's interest by that city to annex to that point. Because if the city is not required to previous point, if a community is not having them build to those standards that they would have, then that generally indicates they're not interested in annexing out that far. So it gives them a step in the review process to not have surprises pop up later on, as we've talked about, where you have a city who maybe wants to do an annexation, and the county doesn't necessarily know about it. Well, they probably would to a certain extent, but all of a sudden you have them annexing out. That kind of gives that two-way street of communication. So they are very common.
Are they common? Is there a certain size? I mean, is it typically a size of 25,000 or is it a?
I think it doesn't necessarily the size of the community, it's the growth of the community.
Okay.
I
And
think
that matters more.
to lead back to Jim's discussion a little bit ago when we were talking about like the Knoxville Estates. So basically, I think where it is advantageous, at least to the city, is if they have control of that 1 mile outside their city and it has to go in per their specs, then later when they get ready to annex it, it's already at the requirements it needs to be annexed.
I have just a note about growth in cities. I know Pella put in a lot of infrastructure out before there was development. If you build it, they will come. That the Pleasantville bypass, when people thought there'd be all that growth out there, I know several people that wanted to put like commercial type properties west of the bypass. But the city told them they would have to bring the sewer, water. I don't know if there was anything else, but it was basically cost prohibitive for building a single commercial unit. So what your city decides they're going to do will determine where and how the growth occurs.
And I think we all, I mean, I think we all want to work well with our cities. I mean, I do think that. It's just understanding, again, we're a unique county where we have two larger towns in our county. Generally, you're only dealing with one. And so
That's one of the overall goals. My goals of the zoning office is that we look at and I know we've especially talked with Knoxville. We need to make sure that our comp plan and our zoning that lays outside of our cities is compatible with what the city's future plan is. So that we're not allowing a housing development in an area where they've got it targeted for industrial.
So Missy, I mean, I know Paula's working on theirs. Have you had correspondence with them?
We had a meeting back in January. We all met and then we were supposed to, as we all got farther along, touch base. I know the city of Knoxville already adopted theirs.
Okay.
So Pleasantville just started on theirs and MIP is also doing that. So yes, we have been, we had conversations and I expressed that's my goals is that we need to make sure, because we have areas outside some of the cities and this map hasn't been updated since.
But is that reciprocation? I mean, is Paula asking for your input in regarding
No,
what we're doing?
no.
Okay.
I mean, the cities have not asked us for
Any
our
input?
input.
Okay.
So, but
But I mean, I
we're
just want to
trying
be able
to
to
ask for
make sure we're trying to do,
we're trying to do what's right because I guess we want to make sure that what we're doing or what we're allowing in the county is reviewed and is compatible with what the cities look at their future. Because honestly, do we want our three larger cities to all have that same 2080 where they have zoning control within the 1 mile? I don't necessarily know that that's the route that we want to go for several
Jim,
reasons.
I do think it is important that we look at that agreement because there is some clauses in there when it comes to when it lies even very minimal within Pella, they can deviate back to us. And so we definitely need to look at that agreement. I agree. So,
If I can mention one thing about
Yep.
it also, just because we do annex doesn't mean at least all the county is going to be out of that, as we all know. There's many places, in Pella, a lot, some here in Knoxville that I still have to go out and do septic work. So such as like you're saying with Pleasantville, we could extend. But can the public sewer actually handle this growth? That's our other questions. Like, we can expand all we want, but what's there going to be our development with that? I mean, we could add new areas, but would Pella sewer be able to handle more? Knoxville sewer? A lot of the times I've been hearing, no, they can't handle more. So more development, more septics, more stuff like that. So we'll still have our hand in there regardless of one way or the other. So.
okay.
I mean, I think to add to Cameron's discussion, we currently have Sunset Acres, Knoxville, or out north of Knoxville. And that one is kind of, as you talked about, it's very unique. So the way it was annexed, we left, there's about a 55 acre piece that is surrounded by the city of Knoxville. Only to the north is it not annexed. So we had to just redo road names, and the west side of the road is a city road, the east side's a county road. And it is
Yeah.
it's not serviceable by any type of city services. So it's now gonna be, whatever development takes place is gonna have to be.
I think the most important thing is when we're working with developers that we're able to approachable. We're able to, and I miss you, you've done a good job, but I do think that's what's important when it comes to a land use plan, right? They want to be able to say, hey, what's your land use plan say? And we can say, yeah, this is the growth. So that we can continue to move this along, so we don't take up too many. Is there any specific questions that we're missing that you need from us to be able to continue with the land use plan?
I think this was a valuable discussion.
Okay. Because I'm not, I mean, I'm gonna seek, I clearly don't always know your world, right? I just know what can be asked of us. And I want the best options in which, that's gonna allow us economic growth. And that then we can make that decision of saying, okay, this is what's been, put to us, and, you know, are we gonna be willing to accept this? Especially when it comes to roads, mainly is what I'm talking about. But, I don't know if, I mean, we have I don't know if that map's in there, but, you know, I like what you have here when it comes to the Knoxville future growth. I can see that and how, you know, it surrounds and outlays, and I would agree with you. That's what I would be looking at too. When you have, I guess it's this page is what I'm looking
Yeah.
at, so. It's not
Yeah,
this,
so
okay.
that came from the Knoxville, their new comprehensive plan.
Okay, all right, so
And I
there's,
think
okay,
to that point of the meeting that we had in January, that discussion was, you know, there's no need for us to work against each other.
correct,
And that
right?
if Knoxville is envisioning this for their potential future areas that they might potentially annex, and this is gonna be their use, then the county's gonna, you know, mimic that.
Yeah, and I will just make one comment. I've been involved with the de-annexation and from the county's perspective as well. Everyone gets a say in it except for the county. And the county's the one that gets left with the pieces to pick up. So our goal ultimately is to make sure that never happens. It sometimes rarely happens, but that's also a thing to think about, that at some point things can be de-annexed and it's up to the county to figure it out. So we're trying to avoid that at all costs, not that saying it will, but I've been involved with it and it was a pain in the butt.
We have a similar, I guess I'm not sure where it's at moving forward, but something to that effect of not a de-annexation, but you know, a city that's disbanding.
Could possibly disband, yeah, yeah. Okay. I guess, does anybody else have any further questions or comments that we need to? I appreciate your guys' I mean, due diligence on this. Do we have any idea of what time frame we're looking at when on completion or anything?
So after we completed our community survey, we're now moving into the small groups discussion part. And so this is maybe the first small group discussion. We'll be having a few more in the upcoming month or two. And then
Okay.
afterwards, the plan should be wrapping up by then.
Awesome. So did you get good participation, you felt?
Yeah, we did. I think we got up to 120 something or 150. I'm forgetting, but
Okay.
somewhere around there, and that's pretty good.
Is it? I mean, kind of sadly, you would think more people would want to put their input, but you know, I also know getting people to do surveys, because we get asked to do surveys on everything. So, you know, those that did the survey, I appreciate that they did them. So yeah. And okay. All right. Well, thank you for your hard work. I do appreciate it. And so, Jim, do you have any questions, thoughts? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
None for me.
Close the
Oh,
first-
boy, sorry. We got to close this discussion. Sorry. Okay. Entertain a motion to close the Marion County Comprehensive Plan discussion.
So
So
moved,
moved. Support.
whatever.
Johnner,
Aye.
McCombs,
Aye.
Mueller.
Aye.
No further comments. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move adjourn.
Support.
McCombs,
Aye.
Mueller,
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.